esteemed guests, online viewers and listeners. Namaskar and welcome to the 14th episode of Pustakalok Light of a Book, an online series of book discussions. Today, our discussion is centered on a book authored by Dr. Marlini Moodley titled Entrepreneurship for Women, an African Dream. This discussion is brought to you by the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India in Durban, South Africa. Thank you to the director, Dr. Yogiji, for this absolutely wonderful initiative. I am Mrs. Nishita Chaitram, your program director for this episode. Allow me to introduce our esteemed and respected guests on our panel. They are Adarniya Dr. Yogiji, Dr. Marlini Moodley, Ms. Vani Moodley, Ms. Avika Ramdhani, and Dr. Bhun Prakash Singh. We also have on board with us Mr. Kiran Singh and Mr. Sipiwe Mkunu. We will begin with a foreword by the author of the book, Dr. Marlini Moodley. Now, Dr. Marlini Moodley is a lecturer at the Distance Education Institute, Mancosa. She has vast experience in the education, welfare, and business sector, where she devotes her passion and expertise to empower women to become financially independent. She is also a director of the African Dream Foundation, assisting with public relations and training programs. Amongst other national and international qualifications, Dr. G holds a master's degree in business administration and a doctorate in marketing. She is also a business advisor accredited by the Institute of Business Advisors of South Africa. The African Dream Sunflower Effect is her second collaboration, which was launched at the Durban Book Fair on the 26th of September this year. Both books are envisaged to empower women to surmount their challenges and succeed in an increasingly difficult socio-economic climate. Welcome, Dr. Moodley.
Thank you very much for that warm welcome. I really appreciate this platform. I really feel honored. It's really a privilege to be on this session today. And thank you for giving me an opportunity to showcase my book. So can I go ahead and just give you a brief in terms of what the book entails? Okay, so I started this book in 2019, envisaging that I would actually write 20 stories. 20 stories of individuals that have started businesses and that have become successful. But the pandemic happened and we found that there were a lot of people that had lost jobs. There were a lot of issues in terms of domestic violence. I think it was just a very, very apprehensive time. And I felt this is the time where I need to speed up the process and get this book out. And my previous experience was being a business advisor. And while being a business advisor, I found that women in general face countless challenges in terms of starting businesses. And even when they get into the business, they have issues trying to juggle all of those roles, trying to be mother, wife, and business person at the same time. And there's a lot of barriers to entry as well in terms of grants and even loans available for women. So I wanted to showcase women, ordinary women that have started enterprises. And generally women are less likely to go and get into financial difficulty by taking exorbitant loans. They try to use their savings. So that is what I wanted to inculcate, that they could take family loans or just use their savings, or if there's perhaps a stock fell that they can start just to kick off and get their business off the ground. And generally, women lack accounting skills and that financial dexterity to run a business. So all of the threads that are mentioned in the book, I'm hoping and envisaging that this would help them. You know, the roles that I've mentioned, the characters that I've portrayed in the books, they're real stories, very, very real stories that people can leverage from. They could get ideas from, and it could stimulate and generate ideas. And I also found that, you know, women face challenges in terms of opportunities to acquire wealth generally. And this is a time where I felt, let's get it out there. Let me get these stories out, because I'm showcasing these women that have started from grassroots level without any input from anybody else. Just single-handedly, they've managed these businesses. And I've been lucky enough to cross paths with several outstanding human beings that have demonstrated resilience in business amid turbulent times. And some of these women were single moms that were battling, you know, just grasping at straws to clothe and feed their children and try to educate them. You know, some of them were just driven by the desire to escape poverty and a past that they wouldn't want to hand down to their children. So they wanted to obviously live a better life. So that is what I wanted to portray in the book as well. Unfortunately, in most countries, entrepreneurship is seen as a panacea, sort of a cure-all for all the social ills that are experienced. And yet in South Africa, we have marginal success with entrepreneurship amid females. It's sort of a last resort. If everything else fails, then a woman would step into a role of being an entrepreneur. So I wanted to showcase that this can be a first option for somebody. Why not? You know, you've got talent, you've got ability. Why not dig deep and find your talent? And it's a God-given talent. And you've obviously got some passion that you can hone into. So my aim was to empower women. And for me, empowering women means different, it could mean, well, it could mean different things to different people. But basically for me, I wanted to be that catalyst for change amongst women. And we've set up a financial literacy and entrepreneurship and innovation center in Meadowlands Technical High School. And we've fully kitted it out, and we were running programs. And I was heading up the programs for women. But unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we've had to put a halt on that. So therefore, I wanted to fast track this book and get it out as quickly. So I published it with just the 9 stories. And I think I've reached that saturation point where, like in a qualitative study, you know, if you're researching 20 people, I think 9 was a good number to go with, because there was that common denominator that I found across all the 9 stories that had grit and had that resilience, and the ladies had courage and determination and just persisted. So that's the common thread throughout all of the stories. And I think anybody that picks up this book and reads it it's going to, at least one of the stories is going to resonate with them, and they're going to also start to dig deep and try to do something with their lives and realize, hey, I can do this too. So entrepreneurship can be a key to lowering the incidence of domestic violence. And we found that during the pandemic, our president was really trying to conscientize us about what was going on in the country. And I feel that a lot of women stay in those cycles of abuse because they cannot sustain themselves. They have no other option. So that is what I wanted to create, that conscientizing that, hey, there is an option. You can do something. You don't need to stay in cycles of abuse. So I had quite a few books sponsored, and I've given out to the shelters in Chatsworth and quite a few of the child welfare entities as well. And I'm quite confident that whoever picks up these books, they're going to be empowered in more ways than one. Because some of these ladies that I'm portraying, it's like real horror stories. Some of them have gone through so much of abuse, and have come out through so much of hardship, starting from grassroots level, and building themselves up. It's almost like they've created an empire for themselves. And I feel that somebody in a shelter that picks up this book and reads it, they're going to get something out of it. It's a real value that, hey, I can do something. I can turn my life around, and I don't need to stay in the cycle. So that is what I wanted to create. And that was my vision for this book. And I showcased Nozi Sagoni. She's an entrepreneur. She does training and coaching. The second story was showcasing Honorable Shamim Thakur Rajbansi, who started a pharmacy. And nobody knows behind the scenes what she had to endure, many years ago as a single mom, and her husband had passed on, and she had this little child, and she didn't even know how to handle the sick child. There wasn't even much awareness about that sickness at the time. And then she got into business. She started a pharmacy, and just reached out to people in the community, and started phenomenal community initiatives. So there's awesome takeaways in that story as well. And the third one was the story of Shamla Govender. She's the owner of New Opinion Pleaters. And if you walk into maybe Foschini or Edgar's or Woolworths and you find a pleated garment, it's definitely done by her company, New Opinion Pleaters. She's one of the most sought after pleaters in the country. And she started, very, very humbly, and just used equipment. She put together furniture, just made it functional, and just started a business, just very, very organically. The next story pertains to Jennifer Smith, who started a company called Marketing Matters. And that was just also because she had lost her job. She was retrenched, and she didn't know what to do. So she started her own marketing consulting company. And the fourth one was, the fifth story relates to Tejas Khan, who owns Forest Fairy Sweets. And she's just a force to be reckoned with in the sweet and chocolate industry. Yet she started making chocolates from a kitchen. So that's a phenomenal story, and I think, if any story stands out, it's this one. Because if you look at the quality, and her website, from where she's come, I mean, she's just amazing, an amazing woman. She's got a zero sugar range, which is, it's sought after from all parts of the world now, and she's actually exporting to Asia. And I think Vani Moodley actually knows some of these ladies that I'm mentioning as well. She's also consulted with them. So they're really, really amazing women that you can identify with. And, there's so much that you can glean off them. The next one was Seema Raghubar. I mean, this is an amazing woman. She got divorced. She didn't know what to do to sustain herself. She started this company from the boot of her car, basically selling overalls and hard hats. And just wherever there was construction, she would just take her vehicle there, park and open up a boot and just sell, those overalls, etc. And that's how she started a business. And now she's developed her business to 3 branches, and she's just really, really unbelievably successful. So yeah, and the next one was Priscilla Govender, who started an NPO and also a karate school. So I just tried to create a balance of, if you've got some talent, even if you don't want to start a business, you can start a nonprofit organization. The 8th story was pertaining to Sheetal Cross, who owns Titanium Media. In fact, now she owns 2 businesses. She's just very, very successful. Also went through a lot of turmoil, abuse. She was, the things she had gone through was just so traumatic. I had to actually edit most of it. I couldn't even publish it because it was really, really too horrific. And yet she had just picked herself up, dusted herself off, and continued in business and just persevered. The last story revolves around Rochelle Gramdo. She's based in Amsterdam, and she didn't have much skills. She learned how to do reflexology and light healing and massage, and that's how she earns her living. So these are simple stories that others can just resonate with. Nothing technical about it. I cut off all the theory and all of the highfalutin context, and it's just very, very simplified, as though I was talking to a 14-year-old. So I'm hoping that these stories can really make a difference. So thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope I provided an adequate synopsis. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Marlini Moodley, for that opening synopsis. I now welcome Ms. Vani Moodley with her contribution toward our discussion of the book. Ms. Moodley is the Chief Executive at Vani Moodley and Associates, a global entrepreneurship, management, leadership, and employee wellness training, coaching, and development company. Ms. Moodley has 29 years of experience in the respective sectors and has held national leadership positions in various institutions. She currently serves on the following institutions: member of the UKZN Extended Learning Advisory Board, member of the DUT Entrepreneurship and Management Advisory Board, director of the Global Institute for Entrepreneurship and Ethics, interim chairman of the Lotus Economic Forum, a chamber for business with a focus on the tenets of Sanatan Dharma. Welcome, Ms. Moodley.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Director of the program. A very good afternoon. Greetings to one and all. Namaste, Vanakkam. It is my absolute pleasure to be sharing this hour with you, and I think what an amazing book to be reviewing and commenting on. A big congratulations to Dr. Marlini Moodley for an incredible publication. And I think as authors, you always want to put out the ultimate. And it was absolutely incredible that you identified the need at a very crucial time in order to package critical stories that would make a difference and inspire women to move forward from where they were at that particular point in time. So congratulations on an incredible book. A wonderful anthology collection of stories, personal experiences, life experiences that really inspire and motivate. Coming from the SME sector, I think it is very important that I do highlight the importance and the role of SMEs in our economy. The SME sector employs between 50 to 60% of South Africa's workforce and contributes about 34% to the country's GDP. It pays about 6% of corporate taxes in South Africa, and this is statistics from the World Bank International Finance Corporation. So on the backdrop of that, I think it is very critical for us to look at different strategies to encourage more people to enter into the economic environment as entrepreneurs. Because given the current context in which we find ourselves, the political context, the economic context, we're finding that the corporate sector is not necessarily going to be employing or creating much employment going forward. So the alternative is to build a very strong entrepreneurship sector that would form the backbone of the South African economy. And when we look at entrepreneurship, we're never satisfied with the number of women that are actively operating in the economy. And that has been one of my areas of focus. And I was very excited to see the basis on which Dr. Marlini Moodley has actually initiated her book. I think, if you look at the gender-based violence figures in our country, it is really outrageous and ridiculous, and it shouldn't exist given the legislative environment that we have, given the empowerment we have of people and the levels of education around gender-based violence, but it still exists. And it's perpetuated through economic dependency. And entrepreneurship is a way in which the cycle of abuse and violence can be broken and dismantled. And the more women who are empowered to realize that they can use whatever skill they have to break through this cycle of violence, the more we would have women walking out of situations, taking responsibility for themselves and their children, and basically ridding themselves of this gross violation. So very importantly, if you look at the examples or the stories and the journeys of the women quoted by Dr. Moodley in the book, you would basically see that they evolved from extreme struggle, poverty in most instances, and it is out of struggle that the need and the urge for economic independence has emerged. Women were also in problematic relationships, which inspired them to become economically independent. And if you look at the variety of the issues that are raised, it is focused on inspiring women in whatever context they find themselves. And although the book doesn't specifically speak about emotional healing, it is a common thread that kind of comes through in terms of how women have either healed themselves emotionally, engaged the services of life coaches to assist them through this process of evolution and blooming into this amazing entrepreneur, or seeking psychological assistance. They also share very openly their own metamorphosis in terms of the thought processes they went through, the struggles they went through in their own minds, and what they had to put in place, either consciously or less consciously, in order to channel them and maneuver them onto this journey. So it is absolutely an incredible book that really inspires people to look into themselves and look into opportunities that may unfold. And just going back a little bit, when you look at historically how we were raised in our homes, entrepreneurship was the last resort. It was for those who didn't get to go to university. It was for those who failed at everything else and got into entrepreneurship by chance. And if you look at inspiring stories like this, it kind of just catapults this whole backward thinking to looking at entrepreneurship as the first resort. And I'm really inspired when I speak to youth today, because the first thing they want to do is study business management. And you ask them why they want to engage in this particular area of study. They say, I want to be an entrepreneur, or I want to be an entrepreneur, I have a skill. And I think it's very important that we inculcate that within the family environment that we're engaging in. Also, women were not really encouraged to enter into the entrepreneurship world because it was considered to be more exclusively for men, and that it was a male-dominated industry and women wouldn't survive nor cope. And women have proven otherwise. When you look at the likes of Tejas Khan, you look at Shamla Govender, you look at Nazi Sangoni, against all odds, they basically emerged as startup entrepreneurs and entering in as growth entrepreneurs and catapulting to export markets like Tejas Khan has. So, it's really very, very inspiring. And I think it cuts across various themes. It cuts across various opportunities that women have in this particular era to really step out into the economy and make the best of it. I think the most important thing that comes across for me is the determination, the resilience of women, their power to evolve and remodel their minds and themselves and be able to stand up against all odds to make the best of the minimal opportunities they find themselves in. And if this book is not an inspiration to women to get out there and make the best of their lives, then I think it's going to take too much more that we cannot fathom going forward. So, Dr. Marlini Moodley, I think you have done an exceptional job, and all the very best to you. And I'm really watching this space to look at all the women that emerge as a result of the impact of the stories that you've shared and the inspiration you've created in it. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share with you today.
Thank you, Ms. Vani Moodley. Before I move on, I must correct myself. Interim Chair Lady of the Lotus Economic Forum. Apologies for that, Ms. Moodley. I now welcome Ms. Avika Ramdhani to share her contribution toward the discussion of the book. Ms. Ramdhani holds a master's degree in business administration. She is a partner development manager at Amazon Web Services. She is a writer, a technologist, a mentor, and a coach. She is an accomplished business executive who has a proven track record of developing high-performance teams, assisting clients and partners through their digital transformation journey. Welcome, Ms. Ramdhani.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for that lovely introduction. Namaste, Vanakkam, and greetings to all the viewers and listeners out there. Growing up in a previously disadvantaged society, I was always looking for inspirational books and people that I could talk to as I was growing up. And this was very important for me because I had dreams that I wanted to achieve, but I didn't have the means to actually go out and achieve them. I always believe that as people who are trying to achieve our dreams, it is important to have access to education, which might be academic. And as you mentioned earlier, I was fortunate to have the opportunity to actually do my MBA. However, there are many people in the communities out there that are actually not so fortunate and don't have the ability to access academic education. I'm an advocate for self-education, and I'm always encouraging people like myself to read books, and more specifically, to engage with authors who are local. And that is because we can relate to these stories, and they are synonymous with many of the people whom we've actually grown around. With that in mind, as a young woman in South Africa with dreams and ambitions that supersede what would be considered the norm, I'm always exploring ways to find inspiration, but also to inspire others. This can be done in many ways, such as talking to different people who have experienced different things in life and trying to replicate, learn from their mistakes, or to emulate some of the good qualities. However, it is also important to give back, and that is something that I try to do, which is to share my experiences with other people and open their mind to the opportunities and the possibilities that are out there. As a reader of this specific book, The book is extremely motivating and captivating as it highlighted successes of female entrepreneurs who have succeeded against all odds while constantly having to challenge the status quo. This is not something that is easy to do as we work in environments that have many challenges that we have to overcome in order to succeed. The various stories showcases women who pursued with their business ideas despite not having all the tools and resources available. Often we come across inhibitors that we might see within our desire to achieve our dreams, and we usually give up and decide to take a different path, which is the path of least resistance. And often our dreams of becoming entrepreneurs are basically swayed by the difficulties we have to experience. So these stories resonated strongly with me, and I'm sure it will resonate with other readers, in that there are people who had the same challenges, if not more challenges, but they've been able to overcome these obstacles to achieve success. In an unequivocal society such as this, with experiencing historic challenges, it requires an extreme amount of determination, grit, and perseverance for women to succeed. And to highlight some of the stories that resonated with me, I'd like to speak about Nozi. So she was a businesswoman that experienced very stringent and stereotypes as she was growing up. And she had to overcome a lot of these stereotypes to be able to pursue her business and to actually achieve success. So this story was something that was quite exciting and quite unique in nature. One other story that really, again, was impactful was that of Sheetal Cross, who owns Titanium Media. And I think, Ms. Moodley spoke about it earlier in that she had a very, very difficult childhood. And she had challenges while she was growing up. To overcome those and be able to open her own business is something that is extremely inspiring and motivating to many people like myself who are keen to become entrepreneurs one day. This book is impactful to young South Africans as it provides insights into the world of entrepreneurship. Furthermore, it provides the reader with ideas on how to garner support to start a business. And lastly, it illustrates that dreams can come true and be realized with commitment, dedication, and hard work. So one day, I hope to become an entrepreneur and draw inspiration from some of these businesswomen and many others who have chosen this path and have succeeded and have achieved their dreams. To end, I would like to say that as readers and people who are interested in inspiring stories, it is equally important for us to support local authors as much as we do international authors. And with that, I would like to give my sincere thanks to Dr. Marlini Moodley for the fantastic job that she has done, not just in releasing this book, but all the effort that it takes, which we might not see as readers, and things that go on behind the scenes to be able to put this book together. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, and more importantly, a very selfless human being, someone who's thinking of the collective and the people out there and how it's going to inspire them, rather than just being a person who's focused on achieving their own dreams and pursuing their own careers. So I must commend Dr. Marlini Moodley on the great work that she has done. And my words of wisdom for people out there is that this book is for everyone. It's not for women only or a specific type of person. I think everyone can draw inspiration and learn something. And most importantly, let's continue to support local authors so that they can continue to write stories that we can actually relate to in the country. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Ramdhani. I now welcome Dr. Bhun Prakash Singh to share his contribution toward the discussion of the book. Dr. Singh is an author and a former educator. Dr. G holds a master's degree in business administration and a doctorate in public administration. Dr. Singh's career spans 15 years as an educator. Dr. G continues to serve at the KZN Department of Sport and Recreation as the Deputy Manager for Policy, Planning, Strategy, and Research. Welcome, Dr. Singh.
Namaskar to my friends at the Swami Vivekananda Center, Dr. Yogi, Kiran Singh, Ms. Jaitram, Sipiwe. It's always a pleasure to be part of such an erstwhile gathering. I think a special word of thanks as well to the panelists who have very kindly decided to allow a non-female to be part of this discussion, you know. Our panelists, the author, Dr. Marlini Moodley, who's done an excellent job with this book, Ms. Vani Moodley, whom I know, I would say quite well, especially in her exploits within the corporate industry. And of course, Ms. Avika Ramdhani, who I've met for the first time, but who's very impressive in terms of both her aspirations as well as the presentation. Also, namaskar and vanakkam to our online audience. As usual, it's a pleasure and honor to be here with you. You know, the best stories that are told come from real life. I mean, no matter how much you use your imagination and conjure up things, nothing touches the heart more than something that is real and true. And I think that is the real selling, marketing point of this particular book that we are discussing. And it's not an easy space to go into, to delve and talk about things that are close to the heart. And especially, you know, the female is construed as being weaker generally. But I think in the weakness that came through the stories, so did the strength to overcome those very weaknesses. I'd like to start with the prologue of the author and just to quote what she says in terms of her objective. I quote, "My desire for this anthology was to showcase a handful of successful female entrepreneurs from amongst my inner circle, to reflect on the successes and throw a spotlight on the adversities they have endured while navigating the chosen, albeit challenging, trajectories on their own steam." I think here the objective of this anthology is very crisp and clear right from the outset. And of course, when you come to the very last line of the book, it has truly been achieved. I think my three panelists have spoken at length about the content of the book, so I'm going to concentrate more on the literary value of the book, so to speak, in broad terms. I think the achievements of the characters as profilees have been very, very substantial. And all of us that have read the book and many of my panelists have cited specific characters, and you realize that from where they started in life, despite their socioeconomic situations, the lack of resources, the lack of role models in their life, besides the adversities of life, they have actually self-realized. And this has brought respect to themselves, not only in the eyes of others, but in the eyes of themselves as well, as people who have overcome their very own demons. As a male, I need to say to you, I do deserve my place on this particular panel because I have three daughters, all very strong-willed, like I think the woman in front of me. And the very same fact, I'm one of 7 children, with 5 of them being sisters. So I think I relate a lot to the situations, that have been discussed in this aspect. And of course, my wife, Irene, is also an entrepreneur of sorts. So I know the challenges firsthand that people go through in terms of realizing themselves. I think all the profilees are very high achievers. The 9 stories that come from across the spectrum cover business, society, politics. And I think I need to say that Vani, you are the 10th. Avika, you are the 11th. And the author, of course, being the 12th of these women out there that have actually made a mark. And of course, our program director, Ms. Chaitra, who's actually managed to steer us very well in terms of discussion. But heroes don't have to be people that perform at world level. If you look around us, and if you look at the 9 people that are profiled in the story that Marlini has put together, our heroes are from amongst us. Not achieving world politics and billions of dollars, but fighting the adversities that they've been faced with within the context. And I think heroes are created by a context. And if ever, this book really pays tribute to that and homage to that particular principle. The women here break the social stereotypes. They create new business. And if you look at the issue of women in business, yes, they're very high corporate people that we know. But I think here, Marlini, you concentrate on the issue of entrepreneurship. And there's a difference between following the beaten path and breaking your own path. And I think the women here have done that. And in terms of the wider sphere of things, in terms of the socioeconomic situation in the country and abroad as well, these people have brought in new business. And you look at the common issues of politics of unemployment, poverty, etc., that we mentioned by Vani. These are the catalysts to help address those kinds of issues. So the achievements of these women don't only benefit themselves, it benefits society as a whole as well. And of course, coming from a female point of view, it makes it that much more potent. I think in terms of writing style that you've used, Marlini, you've used most often the narrative way of presenting the content. And that is very, very effective because these high profile people then become people that we know, people whose stories we can relate to. And I think the importance of good literature is the critical aspect of communication, carrying that message through to the reader. And I think the language that you've used, the easy flowing style, contributes a lot to communicating the message you want to do. So that is excellent. Our profilees are presented as normal people, living normal lives, but achieving at extraordinary levels. And, sometimes when you look at people that have achieved, or especially coming from nowhere, there's sometimes a tinge of, I won't say arrogance, but I deserve it, from what I've got and where I've come from. But none of your profilees have actually fallen into that trap. I think the humaneness of the characters stick out much more than the entrepreneurship itself. Because in my reading of the book, of course, I relate more to those people. And the achievements thus become much more profound, And I think that's also a mark of good literature. So in terms of the uncharted territories that have gone through by our profilees, if you look at Shamin Thakur, for example, she became a politician. It's not very often that you have someone, entering that kind of space, especially with the kind of resilience you have to have getting to that kind of space. Priscilla Govender has been covered as well as a community activist. Nozi Sogoni, a corporate leader, especially in times that it was not possible. Many of these career paths are chosen to become inspirational to the self, because as I would have mentioned, in the eyes of the entrepreneur himself or herself in this instance here, it's a realization of what each one is actually capable of. And sometimes the context, the social context, robs one of the belief of self-worth. So the achievement is for others as well as for themselves. In the same way, we must always remember it's also for the family. They carry the family as well. And they succeed against all odds, and despite the humble beginnings they come from. All these profilees are women with very strong character. That's what actually helps to carry them through. And sometimes you need to be a bit bullheaded in terms of saying, I can do this. The odds say I can't. The logic says I can't. People around me say I can't, but I will do it. And sometimes that blindness to logic is actually an excellent tool. And that comes through in some of your profilees that are here. If you look at Seema Raghuwar's challenging personal life, it did not douse her professional life. It did not allow her to feel a sense of, a minimal self-worth. The traumatic years of Sheetal Cross, for example, I think would have crushed any other woman, but the sheer will to survive actually brought her to where she is today. The same with Jennifer Smith. And this issue of context is so important because Jennifer Smith studied to be a teacher. But I think as we all start, and there's so many people amongst our midst who study and believe that the life path, the career belongs in one direction, only to find somewhere along the way there's a catalyst that gives you a different trajectory. And that this is in her case as well. And she's very successful in the path that she eventually chose as a business entrepreneur. One thing for me that is good was that Marlini, while you wrote the story, at the end of all your chapters, you have this personal message of inspiration from each of those profilees. And I think that's an excellent gem to throw in. Because this character that you write about that we feel is a bit of a distance from us because of how they've achieved. that humaneness comes through in the words of inspiration at the end, and it touches us, and that's excellent. I think the book is definitely a message of hope, and I say good literature always contributes to the benefit of society, either by the discussion, the debate that it generates, or the message that it gives. In the instance of this book that you put together, the anthology, Marlini, it does both. And I think the message of hope that comes through is not only for the women that have been profiled here, but there are men as well who sometimes believe that they just can't do it. Life beats you, you know, like your suicide and everything that comes in there. So this book, while it's written about strong women, the message is broader than just that for women itself. Just in conclusion, I'd just like to say two things. You know, Vani, you mentioned something about the schooling system, right? Or the learning system. Just to add to that, my belief is that our schooling system, very effective, yes, but it teaches us to be good employees. Have we, and I'm an ex-educator, I can say this to you, does our curriculum create the entrepreneurial spirit in people to say, can I make a good employer? Let me be a generator and a creator of work rather than a recipient of someone else's work. So it's a mind shift that maybe the Department of Education can look at, you know, generated from the book that you've written, Marlini. And the book illustrates how forward-thinking women live out the realities. They are true to themselves. There's an absence of role models, but these people become role models by default or otherwise, by design, you know. The last story, Marlini, I'm going to be a bit biased here, about Rochelle, who at some stage in her life came from the School of Industries in Newcastle. And I can tell you, I think I taught this child, because in 85 and 86, I was the first level 1 educator to be transferred or appointed at the School of Industries for Girls in Newcastle. That was the year they were trying this transgender kind of thing, you know, if I may use the word transgender. And I was one of 5 males in like a 45 staff of females, where every child was female, every worker was female, everyone was female. And they, through my limited experience for those 2 years, I learned the atrocities meted out to our girl children. And so for me, the issue of gender is very, very personal. You know, because to tell you, one child was equivalent to 7 normal children. And before I went into a class to teach Afrikaans, like Meferiaza Pateki, I had to read the file on every child. Because sometimes in a class, you talk about a birthday party and someone's father stabbed someone's brother. And the child will just start crying as you're teaching. And sometimes you don't know why and what was the catalyst. So I could understand the issue of Rochelle. And I'll be honest with you, at 1:20 this morning, I sent her an email asking her if she was in school at the time, and if she was, does she remember me? So the book for me was also a reality check, but I can say to you, it touched me in this way, that I probably know the person you speak about, and I think I recognize her face as well. I must also add to you that last night I went to Alliance Francaise for a showing of a lollipop. And the lady that I met there was Shakila Maraj. Probably you may know her. She's, what should I say, challenged in terms of visibility. And she started this company and she's done this great innovation whereby she is bringing in accessible audio to film, where a blind person, a person with that kind of challenge, can actually enjoy a movie without seeing it. And so it's affecting Hollywood, it's affecting us internationally, but it's a South African woman with a disability who's actually created this opportunity. And I was there and I saw it, and I thought about her when I read your book. So amongst us, there are these heroes, these great entrepreneurs who do South Africa proud. I just want to end off by saying that I also cover the School of Industries in a book that I've written called When the Chalk is Down. It's also dedicated to my mother, who was a strong woman. It's also part of a movie project that we are working on. And I'm just mentioning this because this issue of women empowerment is very strong in my belief system, beside my family, immediate family, and my siblings, etc. And I think I want to end off with what Rochelle says, you know, the African woman's battle cry. You strike a woman, you strike a rock. And I think the patriarchal nature of our upbringing is actually taking a knocking now. Not because we want to, but sometimes because we have to, because I think women are earning the space in life as contributors more than just as people who take. I want to wish you all the best, Marlini. yourself, the book, the profile is the African Dream Foundation for the ongoing success of this anthology. I think an excellent piece of work with a great deal of viability for benefit to society. And I thank you all for having been part of the team. Namaskar.
Thank you, Dr. Singh, for your wonderful perspective on the book in question. Thank you to all our respected and esteemed guests for your valuable participation and your contribution in this discourse as well. I now hand you over to Sri Mkunu, who will render the vote of thanks.
Namaskar and greetings to all of you. On behalf of Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India in Devon, I am honored today to deliver a vote of thanks on today's 14th episode of the program, Pustakalok, meaning light of the book. Today's discussion was about the book Entrepreneurship for Women, the African Dream, authored by Dr. Marlini Moodley. You know, ma'am, I'm sitting here, you are talking about this book. There are so many things that are coming in my mind because I'm a father also of 3 girls, you know, so I think this is the right time, you know, this book came at the right time where everybody, as Dr. Singh ji said, this book is for everybody, where everybody needs to be charged up and face the real world. Because where I am coming from, majority of single parents are the ladies. But when it comes to the business world, the majority of those who are operating in the business are the men. You know, so it makes it very hard for the ladies to put their finger, and they are like consumed by the men who are dominating in the business sector. But with this book, you know, it gives us hope, you know, for women also. It gives them hope, you know, that all is not lost. If we have prominent women, you know, who are pushing very hard, it's not easy for them, who are working very hard, you know, to challenge these men who are dominating the business world, and they are succeeding, they are winning, you know. So it means now all the ladies, they need to learn through this book that the sky is the limit for everybody. Because where we are coming from, ma'am, there was this thing that was saying it's a man's world. So now I think that now has been changed. It is everybody's world. Ladies are also, they need to be part of this world. So everybody is charged. I am charged also. You know, as I am saying, I'm the father of 3. So there is a need, you know, for all of us to have fully fair share. Ladies, men, ladies who are working very hard, as these prominent people that you have mentioned in this book, they are working very hard, man, you know. So thank you for charging our ladies, charging our women that they need to work very hard, because nothing comes easy. As long as you roll up your sleeves, you're the man, you are the women, you know, you'll find you'll work very hard, you'll be fine. So to Dr. Marlini Moodley ji, thank you very much, Marlini ji. The book is so interesting. It is wonderful. I wish, you know, it can be available, you know, to all ladies, you know, so that they will have the sense, because there's a sense in me, you know, that the word belongs to everybody. So, ma'am, Dhanyavad, thank you very much. Now, allow me to thank all our online guests, as I thanked Marlini ji earlier. Now, allow me to thank Ms. Vani Moodley ji. She's a chief executive at the Vani Moodley and Associates Pty Ltd, for her wonderful remarks also on this interesting book. Her remarks also were very, you know, spot on. They were only about the ladies. It is time for them now to shine. The sky is the limit for the ladies. Next, allow me to thank Ms. Avika Ramdhani Dr. She's a partner development manager at Amazon Web Services, for her sterling remarks also on this wonderful book, Entrepreneurship for women's the African dream. You know, she also mentioned so many things. So thank you very much, Avika ji. Dhanyavad, ma'am. Lastly, allow me to thank Dr. Bhuvan Prakash Singh, author and educator, for his wonderful remarks also. You know, every time when I'm listening to him, when he's analyzing the book, you know, I'm like so relieved and happy. So to Bhuvanji, thank you very much. Thank you, Dhanyavad. To all of you, Marlini ji, Avika ji, Vani ji, and Bhuvanji, Dhanyavad for taking part on today's program. To Director of the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center, Dr. Chaitanya Prakash Yogi, Nishitya Chaitram, a radio presenter at Hindivani, Dhanyavad ma'am, thank you very much for taking part on today's program. Kiran Singh, thank you very much for taking part on today's program. To all our online viewers, we like to say Dhanyavad for taking part on today's program. You are kindly advised to visit ICCR in Deben Facebook page for all cultural update for the program organized by the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center in Deben. Once again, to our online guests, Marlini ji, Avika ji, Vani ji, and Bhuvan ji, Dhanyavad. To all of you, have a wonderful evening. Namaskar.